Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Eve. One of the things I never know if I'm supposed to be excited about is Lucky Foot. As it's on an item, I pick it up, I get that luck upgrade, and I know that I have an increased chance of getting something from the arcade, and that seems like good enough, but when you think about it, how often will that passive component of it actually be useful? So in some situations would you be rather lucky to pick up a lucky penny or lucky foot, and I think a lot of situations, sure, you would rather pick up lucky foot because it has a better effect associated with it, but in most cases it doesn't make a difference, and when you can actually equate one item to a pretty frequent drop, I think there's something going on there. I do appreciate what lucky foot does as an item. I think that idea of chance, or at least having more chance of getting some payouts from the arcade, it's a very novel concept and definitely kind of promotes gambling a bit more, which is maybe not the healthiest thing in the world, but of course in the context of the game, gambling is already pretty worth it, and just going to the arcade, if you're low on consumables, if you have enough money, it's usually a good idea to do so because you're gonna get something good out of it. But with Lucky Foot, obviously your chances increase even more, which just means that you're gonna be spending less time in the arcade on average, or maybe in other words, you're gonna be spending less money. But in the case if you're going to the arcade, you already have enough money, so that little stat change won't really make that big of a difference. So even though it's a very novel concept, I think it doesn't really get utilized properly, and I definitely think that luck should correspond to getting more payouts from the arcade, or at least from the fortune tellers and the arcade machines and the beggars and things like that, just because I think that would naturally make sense. Luck as it is does have some obvious effects in the game as to the payouts that you get and maybe the consumables that you get after you finish the room, but overall it's not as oomphy as it could be. And I know that not necessarily every stat has to be correlated to something in the game, especially something like shot speed. It seems like it's a stat that doesn't really affect what's going on in the game, but the rest, something like luck, I think could definitely be implemented, at least in the arcades to some extent. Just the fact that there's one item which alters these chances just makes, kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth, and that's not necessarily bad. Like I said, I do like the novel concept of it, but I definitely think that luck could be explored in many more different variations and ways than it already is now. I definitely think that luck is a very important stat, and a very strong stat at that, because it does. Consumables are king in this game. Having a lot of consumables means you have disposable bombs, disposable keys, and you can afford to open all of those chests and keys and rooms and bombs and tinta drugs and what else to actually get ahead of the game. I definitely think those little things do make a difference, and maybe the most important is getting more money, which you can then use to spend in the shop. In this particular run, I did go via the smelter route, and I don't think I've used the smelter since Afterbirth Plus came out, and mainly because there was never really a good chance to use it. The problem is that you can only carry one trinket at most times, which means that at that particular point you have to kind of consciously decide, I'm gonna smelt this trinket, I'm gonna keep smelter with me. I think it's okay as a one-time use item, but just kind of keeping it on yourself for the rest of the run is kind of hoping that you're gonna get some good trinkets out of that. I definitely think in this case it would be good if you could have two spacebar items, which means one of them could be something like Mama's Box and the other one could be the smelter, and that's definitely a combination that you can do with something like the Void. And obviously that's a pretty strong combo, but in this case the smelter is definitely one of those lol so random items, which I like to describe them as, just because it doesn't really do anything, doesn't have any immediate effect, but obviously you can have some fun synergies to go along with it. I thought it was a good idea to actually test it out and maybe just to kind of play around with it. I felt like we didn't really need the razor blade. I decided to pick up the smelter, and actually did some pretty good job for us. We got Lucky Rock, and I think the penny, which has a chance to give you more pennies whenever you pick up a penny. So that's kind of a good combo, because then we blow the rocks up and we get more money on average from blowing the rocks up, as opposed to if you didn't have that trinket. So that's okay in some regard. Obviously nothing too spectacular, but at least it's some form of a synergy that I actually had going for me. One thing that maybe bothers me about trinkets is that their effects, while they're quite unique, they don't really play off each other. There's a lot of items in the game which I feel like play off each other. You have to be like at 1 red health, or maybe you must not have any health in order to fly, or maybe in order to trigger the Whore of Babylon, again you must not have health, or at least have half a heart if you're Eve, and maybe some other items that exist like that. And I would like to see that with trinkets a bit more, and I know the trinkets already are, at least most of them, are in that vein of category where you need a certain type of items, or maybe just run to actually get the use out of them. What's really funny to me, something like Krau's Heart, I believe, is a new trinket in Afterbirth Plus, and what it does is it takes your red heart damage instead of your spirit heart. And that might seem like a very good idea, because obviously taking your red hearts away first before taking your spirit hearts is something that is generally favorable, because Spirit Hearts obviously aren't something that you can replace, and Red Hearts are. But when you think about implications of what that trinket does to you, it's not good, because you have Spirit Hearts as protection for your Red Hearts. So having them circumvent that really doesn't make any sense. It's a neat idea, it's a neat concept. Again, a lot of items in this game are neat concepts, I think, but it doesn't really have any effect on the actual tangible gameplay, and doesn't really have any effect on just how good of a run it makes you. You would really need some edge case scenarios to make that particular trinket useful, and I think that's not really that fun in a lot of cases. And sure, you might argue that maybe when it does work it's very exciting and a lot of trinkets already are useless, but I think that's maybe an unhealthy mindset when you're actually kind of approaching the balance of the game and just what it means. But nevertheless, I've been rambling on too long. Let's focus on this run. So we got one of the new items, which is Bozo, something like that, party hat, I believe. I think that at least that's a new item, I haven't seen it before, and what it apparently does, at least my impression of it, is when I got hit once, there was a random chance of me dropping a rainbow poop, and I think that's definitely a good idea, because rainbow poops are underutilized in this game, and just having a way to spawn them, at least in some case, is a good idea. And in this case, it didn't really do anything else for us. I think there was some other effect, but I can't recall exactly what it was. But if it's just related to maybe like rainbow poops or poops in general, I definitely think there's some merit to that. Having a way to regenerate your health basically to full whenever you play a blood bank or whatever, especially if you can trigger it with IV bag, that would be really useful, because that means if you have enough red health, you can play the IV bag a few times, and eventually, maybe just by sheer chance, you're gonna get that rainbow poop, you can heal yourself back up again, and then play the IV bag, the blood bank, onwards and onwards, and eventually you're just gonna either get something that you want out of it, or you're just gonna get a lot of money. And what's really funny to me, whenever I think of these strategies or things that you can do with items in the game, usually the first thing that comes to mind is the blood bank, and I think that's really telling just how powerful that particular mechanic is. I definitely think there's nothing wrong with that. I definitely think it's okay that the game does have some revolution around red hearts, and basically the blood banks are the only ways which you can get the use out of your red hearts, and I think that's what makes them so significant and why I actually mention them so much. So as this run went on at the start, it wasn't that hard. I would say that definitely wasn't a hard run, but I did definitely struggle a bit with time, and I think that's just the case that it's a hard daily, because it's Monday, and every Monday is a hard daily, and because of that, the floors are naturally larger, and if you really don't have a strong run, it'd actually be quite hard to actually get to boss rush, and in this case, that's definitely what happened to me. I just couldn't get to boss rush in time, and if I actually dedicated myself, because I saw the map in some instances, if I just went for boss rush, I thought I could have made it, but I really didn't want to go to my treasure rooms, because it was an Excel floor. I also wanted to go to the shop, because you never know what good things might light in there, and in that case I actually did kind of make a decision at that point. So should I stay in the shop and try to reroll, so maybe hopefully I get a Mama Mega or just other breaking items? Sadly, I didn't get anything of that caliber, but I did get some other goodies which kind of helped me out on the run. So there's options which, okay, maybe they didn't help me that much, but I did get that. There's option and the Steam sale, and also the Humbling Bundle, and I think all of these are obviously good items. But if I just stopped at the first instance where I got Champions Belt and Humbling Bundle, I definitely think I could have made it to boss rush, and then maybe, I don't know if I could have made it to Harsh, depends on the items that were in the boss room. But I think it was definitely one of those things where if I did go to boss rush, I would have, or at least if I made it in time for boss rush, I definitely would have tried my hand at boss rush, but I don't think I would necessarily be strong enough to complete it under a time period where I could then catch Harsh. And again, the reason for that is that the womb floors are also pretty large, and especially on hard dailies they're even larger, which means that you need more time to actually get through it. I did get quite strong at the end, and I think I could have made it if I actually did kind of rush my ass off, but I decided to go against it. I thought it might be a better idea to just explore the rest of the floors and actually go to Harsh, because at least that puts me ahead of the people who went to boss rush and they maybe tried to get to Harsh, and in return they maybe missed Harsh and maybe even missed on some exploration bonus, and definitely think that kind of elevated me, at least in positions, to some extent, and it did help. I did rank out pretty well, so I definitely think it was a sound strategy. What I was hoping for maybe even more was Mama Mega, and then I could have made a decision. If I felt like I couldn't make it to boss rush, I could have used Mama Mega immediately, and if I felt like if I couldn't make it to boss rush, then I could take the whole time in the world I had and then use Mama Mega for Harsh, and I could have made it that way. So that was maybe one of the strategies I was going for. It didn't really turn out well, but at least my exploration bonus is actually pretty high, so it's even higher than yesterday, and I think I missed only 1 second secret room, don't count me on that, but I definitely think something like that. But overall, just because of how large the floors were, my acceleration bonus is actually pretty high. We did finish in the 53rd place, which is pretty good, I can be too sad, even though our score is actually pretty abysmal. 41,000 or at least 42,000, something like that, is not that good of a score for a run that goes to, on a hard mode daily, that goes to Blue Baby. So I'm kind of surprised that actually I'm so high. I really thought it was going to be much lower, but apparently this was a hard daily and a lot of people did miss those important objectives. But what can you do? I'm just excited I actually made it in time, and actually I did rank pretty well. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.